In 2019, I don't think there's an easier way to reach a politician or interact with a politician or hear from a politician than on Twitter or other social media platforms. But that raises a big question. Should politicians be able to block people on their official accounts? Hey everybody, how's it going? Thanks for stopping by. You know, in the last few years, social media has gone from just very important in people's lives to ubiquitous in most of our lives. Certainly younger people, certainly those connected to politics, it's very difficult to operate without social media. Either your own account or just the need to follow, the accounts of politicians and other key officials. And the reality is that it's quickly becoming a necessity. And that's raised a big question for some people because on most social media platforms, you have the ability to block people. Now, often blocking is reserved for people who are, rude to you on an individual by individual basis, or you don't get along with somebody or what have you. You've always had that ability to block people on Facebook or Twitter or what have you. But in an era where increasingly official government entities and elected officials and people seeking elected office are using these platforms, not as individuals, but for clear political and institutional purposes, it raises a question. Are people's rights being violated when they're blocked from official accounts? And my view is largely yes. Now, in the United States, this has been somewhat settled. There was a recent legal case that argued successfully that when Donald Trump blocked American citizens, he was effectively limiting their access to government information because Donald Trump's official account, even though it's the same one he used when he was just a private citizen, is effectively a vector of government communication. And as such, it should be publicly available to everyone, to all American citizens. And that when you're blocked from that platform, you are effectively being shut out from reading these things. And even, in a sense, you're also being blocked from accessing the debates happening in and around the president and his official communications. And that was a pretty landmark case, showing that politicians have a much higher standard to prove when they start restricting access to their formal social media accounts. I assume that it'll apply to other elected officials like congressmen and senators, and it likely probably applies to official government accounts, say for, the FBI or official government agencies, that them blocking people effectively limits their access to information, and that can't be tolerated. Here in Canada, things are a lot less clear. There hasn't really been a case about it. There was a recent, trial or a recent case that never went to trial involving the mayor of Ottawa and some citizens who were blocked by him. But because there was no real formal public declaration through a judge's decision or what have you, we don't really have precedent in Canada like we do with the Donald Trump decision in the United States. So that raises a question. Should politicians block people? And ultimately, do you think that they can, or do you think that they should be legally able? And I'm of the opinion that they shouldn't be. That elected officials and people officially seeking office and official government entities, official public entities, should not be able to block Canadian citizens because it is limiting their access to government information. The reality is that we all have a sort of duty and a sort of right to be politically active in this country. And I'm of the mind that the best form of political activism is driven when you're educated and you're informed. An ability to be informed often includes being able to read broadly. We all have our own bubbles, certainly we do. But if you want to get a sense for what's going on other parts of the political spectrum, reading the tweets of politicians is sometimes a good way to go. And if you're blocked by a politician, that effectively removes your ability to access that information that person is offering. That public space is effectively closed to you and in a way that it wouldn't be for anybody else. I'm of the view that that's problematic. Now, people have argued that there should be exceptions made for harassment and people making threats, and I'm sympathetic to that, but even still, I don't think blocking people is necessarily the best path. If there are truly actions on social media that verge on criminal or verge on harassment, those things should be reported to the police, and they should be reported to the social media platform to have that account suspended or blocked. In a more general sense, that account is violating the policies of the social media platform. Blocking that person doesn't actually address the root cause, which is the harassment, and only serves to limit access to politicians. I would argue that a better alternative is to mute people. Most platforms like Twitter have the ability to mute people. That means that they can still participate on social media. They can still read your notices, read your opinions, read your declarations, read, new policies and opinions on those policies, but they don't necessarily have the ability to fill your notification forms with harassing and trolling behavior. And that's, I think, a fair compromise, because it allows politicians to protect themselves from uncomfortable behavior, but it doesn't limit citizens' right to participate. And it is especially important because when we're talking about people who are being blocked, not because they're committing harassment or a crime or threats or what have you, but simply because they disagree passionately with the politician in question, it gives them the continued right to access that politician. Because of course, a politician does not owe you a response. A politician does not owe every single Canadian or every single constituent an answer on a question. They don't owe you that. It's not physically and mentally and emotionally and logistically possible for a MP to personally answer every single request they get on Twitter. Nor should it be expected that they do. But access to their words should be broadly defined. But in a general sense, any elected official or anybody formally seeking office shouldn't be able to block people on social media. That is my perspective. Now, it's going to depend on certain factors. Are you a politician that has a public account and a private account? Could you make the case that your private account is actually private, where you spend very little, if any, time actually talking about your formal role? In that case, you may be able to block people from that account and restrict access to that account. But your public-facing account must remain public. I think this should come to a head in Canada at some point in the near future. Some politicians have a reputation of blocking people on social media, whether it's because of harassment or because of disagreement. Sometimes maybe it's both. The reality is that politicians shouldn't be able to do that. One of the great things about social media is that it gives unparalleled access, and that access is a good thing. That transparency is a good thing. Politicians should not be able to block people on social media. They have the ability to mute people on social media, and that should be the tool they use as a default. And the legal jurisdiction, the legal precedence that relates to Donald Trump, well, it hasn't happened in Canada. I believe and I hope that should it ever go to a court, trial here in Canada where a politician defends their right to block, Canadian citizens from accessing their account, that, judges in Canada side with public access. So everybody, thanks again for stopping by. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, I would appreciate if you like, comment, and subscribe. Doing so really helps me out, helps to spread the message, helps to let people know about these sorts of discussions, to get people thinking about what it means to have access to their government and their elected officials in the technology age, in the 21st century. It's not the same as it was before, so rules are different now, and expectations are different now, and I think this is a case where we have to, update our legal codes, update our codes of conduct, update our systems to ensure that politicians remain as accessible as is possible to all people, even those people they disagree with on social media. I also want to know what you think. I want to know what you think about this issue. Do you feel politicians should be able to block those who disagree with them on social media, especially if they're citizens in the jurisdiction in question? Do you feel that should be allowed? Do you feel it should be reserved in very rare cases like harassment and things like that? Or do you feel that even in those cases, the response isn't blocking, but, approaching through legal and or, social media platform means? I really want to hear your opinion on this. I think there actually is a debate about this going on, so I want to know what my viewers think about this issue. And if you can, I would appreciate your support on Patreon. Supporting me there helps to improve the quality and quantity of content on this channel, and it helps to bring a voice that's pretty rare on YouTube. Of course, you guys know I've been on David Dole's channel a few times now. David does great work. David does cover Canadian politics, but he's primarily interested in American politics, whereas this channel doesn't exclusively cover Canadian politics, but it's primarily focused on Canadian politics. So if you want to see Canadian politics being covered on YouTube from a left-wing perspective, supporting me on Patreon is the best way to make that happen and to improve the general reach of this channel. So guys, I hope you have a good one. Let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll see you next time.